Tantor Audio, a division of Recorded Books, presents The Paris Librarian by Mark Pryor. Narrated by Todd Mclaren. Chapter 1. The note sat beside his coffee maker, the elegant handwriting unmistakable. Café Le Rhin at 8:30 this morning. Come alone and unarmed. Tell no one. Hugo Marston read the note twice and sighed. Despite Tom Green's rough demeanor, hard-drinking ways, and sailor's vocabulary, his friend and current roommate had an artistic side that very occasionally revealed itself in his appreciation of classical music, several styles of painting, and, less occasionally, in his own handwriting. The clock on the kitchen wall read 8, and Hugo considered the possibilities. Either Tom was back working for the CIA and needed his help with an undercover operation, or his friend was screwing with him. Given the tone of the note, Hugo was prepared to put his money on the latter. Even so, a trip to Café Le Rhin was welcome enough on a lazy Sunday morning, especially since the coffee maker propping up Tom's note turned out either sludge or drain water, depending on its mood. The decision was made easier when a quick check on the fridge showed that someone had eaten the last of the eggs and bread. The only thing that gave Hugo pause was the time of the requested rendezvous. Rare enough for Tom to be out of bed by 9, let alone 8 on a weekend, or any day come to that, and also be in decent enough shape to leave the apartment for a meeting. Hugo opened the window to check on the temperature, the cool of the early morning already giving way to a mugginess that had clogged Paris for most of August. Half a dozen times that month the city had been battered by afternoon thunderstorms, rain pounding the pavements and the streets, turning them into little rivers as the sky crackled and snapped with lightning, thunder rolling angrily above. August was vacation month in France, and traditionally, Hugo, along with many other employees at the U.S. Embassy, was given the chance to work from home when he was able. Several afternoons he'd watched from his fifth-floor apartment as the tourists on Rue Jacob scurried for cover, filling the nearby cafes and bistros. The stores selling cheap umbrellas and plastic ponchos filled their coffers too, opening their doors wide every time the sky darkened, or a few heavy raindrops hit the sidewalk. Hugo showered and dressed quickly. He ran a comb through his hair and frowned when he spotted a few more grays. Time to stop looking too closely, he thought. He trotted down the stairs and waved at Demetrios, the concierge for the apartment building. The Greek wasn't supposed to work weekends, but he lived 3 streets away in a tiny apartment with his wife and 4 children, and his comfy chair and sturdy desk were the perfect place to find peace and quiet, and to read a good book. He looked up and spoke as Hugo passed. "Bonjour, Monsieur Marston. Did the young lady find you?" Hugo stopped. "Young lady?"
"She was here yesterday. You were at work. Don't worry, I didn't tell her anything about you, not where you work or your schedule or anything."
"I appreciate the discretion, Demetrios, but I don't know who you're talking about. Not Claudia?"
No, of course not. She was younger, this one."
His eyes brightened at the memory, and he gave Hugo a mischievous wink.
"Very pretty, though. I won't mention her to Mademoiselle Claudia. I promise."
Hugo shrugged. "I still don't know who you're talking about, I'm afraid. Claudia's the only woman I've dated in a long time. Perhaps one of Monsieur Green's friends?"
"Non, certainement pas."
Demetrios shook his head. "Definitely not."
"This one was... She was dressed a little strangely, all in black, but she seemed sweet, a nice girl. Not his type."
Hugo laughed. "You are an observant man. If she comes back, Ask for her name and phone number. I'm curious now."
"Oui, monsieur, I will."
The conspiratorial wink again.
"And not a word to Mademoiselle Claudia."
Hugo chuckled and stepped out onto Rue Jacob, turning right and starting a slow stroll toward Café Laurent. He had no plans for the day other than a desire to peruse the stalls along the River Seine that offered mostly tourist items, but also the occasional collectible book, which is where Hugo's interest lay. Since the disappearance of his bouquiniste friend, Max, Hugo had subconsciously put a hold on his slow but regular book-buying, stalling the gradual trickle of first and rare editions that he'd gathered for years. He owned almost 100, some in his bedroom, but most in a locked glass cabinet in the main room of his apartment. Their colorful spines were a special display to Hugo, a touchable and rearrangeable work of art, more permanent than flowers, but just as beautiful. And they were more than just trophies to admire. Hugo had read every single one, convinced that even rare and delicate books deserved the fulfillment of their purpose before being transformed into collector's items, treasures that were no longer cherished for the words between the covers, but for the covers themselves and the name printed on the front. As he neared the end of Rue Jacob, his phone rang, and the name Paul Rogers showed up on the screen. Rogers was the director of the American Library in Paris, on Rue du Général Camus, in the 7th arrondissement. Hugo had worked several functions there for the ambassador, and Rogers was his point of contact. He was in his late 50s, balding and quiet, but always ready with a smile, and ruthlessly efficient. Hugo also knew that there was a little more to the man than his gentle demeanor suggested. As a matter of course, Hugo was required to look into Roger's background, and in doing so had unearthed a past that, in days gone by, would have been labeled colorful. The librarian's interest in books was preceded by a career in film, making short movies that catered to a small but enthusiastic group of adults whose nocturnal activities were harmless, other than being potential fodder for the tabloids should a politician or movie star be found in their midst. Hugo and Ambassador Taylor had enjoyed a chuckle over some of the imaginative titles, but they quickly decided that his lack of criminal record, his bachelor's in English literature and master's degree in library science, and the trust of his young but highly cultured fiancée, Sarah Gregory, were better ways to judge the man. Without hesitation, they'd agreed that Paul Rogers was no security concern, and over their dozen or so interactions, he'd proved himself devoted to his books, his girlfriend, and helping the diplomats and other guests of the American embassy enjoy the delights of the largest English-speaking lending library on the European continent. The library sold books, too, twice a month, and Hugo had asked Rogers to call him when he noticed something special up for grabs. "Paul, how are you?" Hugo said, slowing his walk.
"Great. Just wanted to let you know about a little sale we're having."
"Oh, yes?"
"Not just the usual fundraising thing. We have some older books we don't really have space for anymore, and some others we don't want to spend the money restoring. 200 or 300 books. I'm sure you could find something."
"Any particular theme?"
"No. We have a little of everything. The big money-maker will likely be a 6-volume set of Gibbon's History of the Decline and Fall of the Roman Empire."
"Surely not a first edition set?" asked Hugo.
"It most certainly is."
A note of humor entered Roger's voice.
"Care to guess how much we're selling it for?"
Hugo stopped and leaned against the stone wall of a boutique clothing store. He could picture the books in his mind, but couldn't even imagine owning a set like that. Or reading it. "Well out of my league, I'm sure. 20 grand?"
35 in U.S. dollars.
"That'll pay your salary for a couple of years?"
"I wish you were joking.
Roger said lightly. "You're worth every penny. Any stocking stuffers I might be able to afford?"
"You like the literature side of things, if I recall. As opposed to photography, religion, and philosophy, I mean. Couple of good travel books, too, if that's your thing."
"It is in theory, but I have to focus my collection. Until you mistakenly sell me a first edition Jack London or H.G. Wells for a couple $100.
"Lord, I'd lose my job for that," Rogers laughed. "Let me think. We have a first edition of Cormac McCarthy's The Road for a few $100.
"I prefer something a little older. Signed, too, if possible," Hugo added. "Almost all the ones in my tiny collection are signed."
"Nothing springs to mind. I'd have to look and see which ones are," Rogers said. "Oh, wait. How about a Truman Capote? In Cold Blood. I know it's a first edition, and I think it has his autograph in it, too."
"How much?"
$3,000, I think. Let me pull it up on my computer."
"For that price, it better be signed."
"Here we go. Yep, $3,500, and it's signed. Want me to put it aside?"
"Let me think about it. That's still pretty expensive. I'm just a lowly government employee, you know." Rogers laughed.
"I know, Hugo, I know. The sale starts tomorrow, so I'll hold it for you until you get here. Does that work?"
"Perfect. I'll take the morning off and be there by 10.
"Do me a favor. Bring your buddy Tom. He's a blast. And I like the way he spends your money."
"I'll think about it."
As soon as Hugo hung up, his phone rang again.
"You coming or not?" Tom asked. "I'm on my way. 5 minutes at the most." "What's going on?" "It's a secret." "Yes, one that I'll find out in 5 minutes. Why can't you just tell me now?" Hugo waited for a response. "Tom? Hello?" The screen on his phone was dark. "Typical," Hugo muttered to himself, and resumed his walk. It took him 10 minutes, and he breathed in deeply as he pushed open the door to Café Laurent, the aromas of coffee and freshly baked bread welcoming him into the large, cool room. He saw Tom at the back of the café, sitting with 2 people, a young lady he didn't recognize, and another slight figure who was sitting with her back to him. He started toward them, and waved when Tom looked up. He was 10 yards from their table when the young lady with her back to him turned around. Hugo stopped in his tracks, a smile of surprise and delight spreading across his face. She smiled too, then sprang up and ran over, wrapping her arms around him and squeezing him tight. "Well, now, what are you doing here?" he asked, hugging her back. She looked up and grinned. "I'm pretty sure you said I could visit any time I liked." "I'm sure I did," Hugo said. "But we have phones here. You're allowed to call in advance."
"Ha!"
She released him, tucking her arm through his and leading him to the table.
"Don't you remember our trip to the cemetery? The party we went to?"
"How could I forget?" Hugo grimaced playfully. "Ah, yes, that's right. You're one for surprises, no doubt about that." She squeezed his arm.
"Especially where you're concerned."
They stopped beside her empty chair, and Hugo looked into those clear, almond-shaped eyes. "It's good to see you again, Merlin. It really is." Chapter 2. They sat around the table, and Merlin introduced Hugo to
"My partner,"
Michaela Harrison. She was, like Merlin, a beautiful young woman. Her dark hair fell either side of an oval face, but where Merlin's skin was café au lait, Michaela's was just the lait, classic English pale, the perfect canvas for her striking blue eyes and cherry-red lips. She was slender, but not in the same way as the waif-like Merlin. More athletic.
"Call me Mickey,"
she said, shaking Hugo's hand. She smiled and held his eye for a shade longer than he expected. Confident girl, Hugo thought. A waitress appeared, and Hugo ordered coffee for himself and croissants for everyone. When the waitress left, Hugo turned to Merlin. "How did you get hooked up with this guy?" He thumbed toward Tom, who was looking smug. "And are you in Paris for fun or work?" He paused. "Or one of your parties?" Merlin laughed.
"Same old Hugo, full of questions. Someone I did some genealogy work for gave me access to his apartment as partial payment. We can even use his smart car, though I can't imagine driving around Paris is a lot of fun. Anyway, we got in yesterday and we went to your apartment, and then the embassy to find you. Tom was talking to the security people and heard me asking. He said we should surprise you here this morning."
"He's like you in that way," Hugo said. "Always a bundle of fun." "Hey, be grateful I've included you at all." Tom winked, but didn't elaborate. He didn't need to. Sitting at a cafe with two pretty girls was about the only thing in the world likely to get him out of bed in the morning. Mickey rummaged in her bag and then stood.
"I don't smoke much, but something about being here."
She gave an embarrassed smile, and Tom stood to let her out. "Maybe I'll join you," he said, ignoring Hugo's, "So you smoke now, too? Look." When they'd gone, Merlin reached over and squeezed Hugo's hand.
"It's really good to see you again. You look good."
"So do you," Hugo smiled. It had been several years, but she looked the same. That hint of Asia around her eyes, the smooth olive skin. Her black bob was now streaked with a line of blue, but otherwise she looked the same as when she'd stumbled into the first investigation he'd conducted as an RSO, when he was heading up security at the U.S. Embassy in London. Merlin had been friends with a movie star Hugo was supposed to babysit, one who disappeared moments after they'd met. Without Merlin, he'd have had no idea where to look for the man. With her, he found himself chasing through the English countryside and, to his chagrin, wearing leather pants and a matching vest at a secret party at an English mansion. She'd opened his eyes to a different way of living and loving, testing the unjudgmental part of himself that he so valued. In her world, anyone could be anything, and sexual exploration was to be encouraged, no matter how out there it seemed. Hugo had gone along, mostly out of necessity, and had gained a valued friend in the process. They'd swapped a few emails after that case, but, as often happens with hurriedly formed friendships, the lines of communication had thinned out, and they'd not corresponded in almost a year. "So tell me why you're here, and for how long?" he said. She released his hand and sat back.
"I'm really just tagging along with Mickey. She's a journalist and wants to write about the movie star Isabel Severin. She lives here, and apparently her papers are now available at some local library. She's a little obsessed. Seems to think Severin was a spy during the war."
"A spy for whom?" Hugo knew that the 1940s actress, now in her late 90s, lived somewhere in Paris, after having moved here in the 1970s when she upped and left Hollywood, ending her career on a high note and on her own terms. She'd never attended any embassy events, despite numerous invitations, but Hugo's boss, Ambassador J. Bradford Taylor, claimed to know her. A little, anyway. "She's still beautiful, Hugo, I promise you. The sweetest, kindest, and most elegant woman I've ever met," he'd said. And something of a recluse, Taylor acknowledged, attended to by one or two close friends, and a carefully vetted and fiercely loyal personal assistant.
"For the Allies,"
Merlin said.
Her theory is that she used her stardom to buddy up with top people in the Vichy government, then passed on secrets to the Americans, British, and even the Resistance.
You know, I may have read about that somewhere many years ago.
There's even a dagger involved.
How so? Hugo asked.
The story goes that she was delivering secrets to a resistance cell in 1944, and 2 Gestapo officers showed up. She pretended to seduce one, and used his own dagger to kill him.
That's so.
Yeah, well.
Merlin rolled her eyes.
It's on the internet, so I assume it's true.
So what happened to the other officer?
No idea. I suppose the resistance fighters killed him, but you'd have to ask Mickey. She knows all the gory details.
I will. So where is this dagger and stash of papers? Hugo had a pretty good idea, and he made a mental note to call Paul Rogers.
No clue.
She grinned.
Like I said, I'm just tagging along so I can see you.
I'm glad you did. Hugo hesitated. You said Mickey was your partner. I wasn't sure if you meant in business or... Merlin waved a hand.
It's complicated. We're good friends, but... It's complicated, but mostly in a good way.
Yeah, well, watch out for Tom. He likes complicated, and he especially likes innocent-seeming pretty girls from England.
You know I can look out for myself, she said with a wink. And don't call me innocent.
I said innocent-seeming, and I know you can look out for yourself. Just look out for Mickey, too. Merlin chuckled.
That girl can handle herself, don't worry. Last night Tom came on a little strong, and she shut him down lickety-split.
That's good to know. So who is she writing this article for?
Freelance. She thinks it might even be a book. As well as the mysterious dagger, she's convinced there is a bunch of Severin stuff that's never been seen before, and that puts some people in a bad light. Politicians who are now dead, and a few old movie stars, but still. Those people have families and estates to worry about, which means it'll be controversial.
And therefore will sell.
Precisely, Merlin said. Assuming all that stuff exists, and she can get her hands on it.
Some grand conspiracy to hide the truth, eh? Hugo said.
Yeah, well, don't be sarcastic with her, Merlin chided. She'll stab you with her pen.
Maybe I can help. I'm headed to the American Library tomorrow to look at some books they're selling. I'll ask my contact there. He'd know the whereabouts and extent of the collection.
But will he tell you if there's secret stuff? Mickey's made several calls, had important people pull all kinds of strings, and the best she's got is basically, come have a look. We'll let you see what we'll let you see.
Hugo spread his hands. I can ask. Isabel Severin is still alive and living here in Paris. You guys should try to talk to her. Merlin raised a delicate eyebrow.
Bloody hell, Hugo, what a great idea! She'd never have thought of that. You don't have a high opinion of journalists, do you?
Ah, you tried already. Sorry.
Mickey can't even get close to her. Apparently, she doesn't like a lot of attention, and her former personal assistant was a little, shall we say, tight-lipped. You know anyone close to her?
She and I don't move in the same circles, Hugo said, although my boss claims to know her a little. I can ask him, but no promises. They sat quietly for a minute, watching the morning activity of the cafe. Then Merlin said,
We may be going to a party tonight. You want to chaperone us?
Hugo's mind flashed to the last party he went to with Merlin, an underground, highly secretive BDSM event, where he'd found an important clue in the case he was working on. What kind of party? He asked suspiciously.
Same as last time.
she said lightly. "But French. Strict dress code, of course. But I can help you with that." Hugo smiled and shook his head in mock disgust. At the party in England, she told him that he would be allowed in only if he was wearing leather, the party's dress code. She forgot to mention that a tuxedo was also permitted, a rule he would have followed quite happily, and one he discovered once he was already inside the party dungeon. One of those things, he thought, that's a lot funnier in hindsight than at the time. "I'll pass," he said. "Feel free to take Tom. He may actually enjoy it." "Scaredy cat." They looked up as Mickey and Tom rejoined them. Mickey poked at her coffee and frowned. "That went cold fast," she said. She looked up at Hugo. "Merlin said you're head of security at the U.S. Embassy here." "That's right," Hugo said. "What does that mean exactly? What do you actually do?" "That depends on the day, the week. It varies a lot. Sometimes I'll escort guests. Sometimes I'll arrange security for dignitaries. Sometimes I'll work with local police when there's been a crime involving an American citizen." "Do you carry a gun?" Whether or not RSOs carry weapons is decided by the two countries involved, so that also varies from embassy to embassy. "I was asking about you," Mickey pressed. "I know you were." Hugo smiled. "Tell me about your writing project. Merlin said you're writing an article about Isabel Severin." "I'm actually hoping it'll be a book. Amazing person. She wasn't just the most beautiful woman who ever lived. She was a good person, too." "And brave, if she was a spy." Mickey watched him, as if wondering whether he was making fun of her. "Merlin told you about that?" "I think I already knew about the rumors, but yes, she said you were looking into whether or not that was true." "I'm pretty sure it is, but she doesn't want anyone to know." "So shouldn't it stay a secret?" Mickey smiled. "Merlin said you were kind of a Boy Scout." "Meaning?" "Meaning, if one of the most famous actresses of the last century went up against and defeated the Gestapo, that should be public knowledge, especially 70 years later. What's the harm?" "Maybe that's for her to decide." Mickey's voice hardened. "I've never known a historian or journalist to ask permission from their subject. So I'd say no, it's not." "I'm with you on that," Tom interjected. "But aren't there books about her already?" "One or two, but nothing published recently." Mickey nodded. "But they barely touch on her travels, and whatever else she got up to in France. Since her papers have just been donated to the American Library here, I'm hoping there's something new and different I can share with the world about her role in the war." "You're sure she had a role?" Hugo asked. "Yes, at least I think so." She flashed a smile. "If I get to see all her papers, I'll find out." "Seems like a tough story to dig up." "I like a challenge," she said. "And once I get my teeth into something like this, I don't give up until I get the truth, all of the truth. If there's a story there, I'll get it one way or another." "Very admirable. You know what? Let me call my friend at the library right now." Hugo stood. "A little noisy in here. I'll be right back." He walked out of the cafe and found a shaded spot on the sidewalk. He dialed Paul Rogers, who answered quickly. "Paul, Hugo Marston again. Hope this is a good time." "Change your mind about the book?" "Not at all. It's about a new collection you guys have. Isabel Severin's papers." "Ah, yes. I'm in charge of those, as it happens. What do you want to know?" "I have a friend here. She's planning to write a book about Severin. She seems to think the actress was involved in the war, some kind of spy or something." Rogers didn't reply immediately.
Well, I've not gone through everything yet.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?